So never pay retail for a college. I have a 15-year-old who's a sophomore in high school. And so I am living the dream right there with you in terms of trying to figure out how to make this affordable. For those of you that can't see what this chart tells us, I want to explain it. This is a chart that looks at the price that we've had to pay from 1996 through the end of 2016 on a lot of different things that we're accustomed to paying for. And what the data tells us is that relative to wages and prices, it's never been a better time to buy television sets. This one down here says, wow, let's all run out and get a TV because it's less expensive than it's ever been. Now, all the stuff that's kind of straight lined, that's cars, couches, and clothes. So furniture, automobiles, clothing that we wear, relatively speaking, it costs about as much in 2016 as it did in 1996. But what you see costing a whole lot more are things like medical care, child care. But the ones at the very top of this chart, textbooks and college tuition. There is nothing that has become more expensive for us as consumers than educating our kids. And so we as parents have to be better consumers of higher education. So that's what we're going to learn tonight. We're going to talk about how we can just be smarter. Here's some staggering statistics. College, the cost of college right now doubles every decade. And from the time that baby's born to when they're going to fill out an application to go to college, it's going to triple. It's like a runaway freight train. So trying to save at that rate is virtually impossible. So we just have to tackle this differently. This is the way most people feel. Are you kidding me? I'm going to put my head in the sand and hope it works out, okay? But that's not a very good strategy. So I want to arm you with some information that allows you to navigate this project a lot more effectively. And we're going to start with this collision that took place in my life about 15 years ago. I was a financial planner, still am, and then I became a mom. So 15 years ago, my son Mac was born. And when I did the math, because I'm a planner, back then on what it was going to cost to send him to school, I said, wait a minute. This is way too expensive. There's got to be a better way to do this. And so I've spent the last 14 years of my professional life figuring this out, which is when and just last March, I wrote this book, Never Pay Retail for College. So I'm going to tell you what the book's about tonight, okay? 14 years of experience with families and the whole financial aid system and college counselors and financial aid offices. How can we be smarter in terms of paying for school? And here's what it boils down to. I'm going to hand something out to you in a little bit that's going to have these 12 critical components on the handout. But the thing that amazed me, coming from a financial planning background, is it's not enough to just figure out where am I going to find the money for college. College is a multi-year project plan, and there are 3 sets of components we have to pay attention to. You'll notice that they're color-coded. So the students in the room that want to go to college, these are your responsibilities. Number 1, you have to match your qualifications to the schools that you want to attend. So what does that mean? GPA, test scores. It's all relative. I'd like to live in Jennifer Aniston's Malibu beach house, but I'm not going to get pre-approved for the mortgage. So I don't get to live there. You can apply to schools where your GPA and test scores and class rank are relative to all the kids that are applying to those schools. We're going to talk about school selection a little bit later, and I'll help you understand that. But your job is to do school as well as you can do it. Second is prepare for college admissions. What does that mean? You've got to write an essay, not like you write it for English class, but that helps the admissions committee understand who you are as an individual. You have to stand out from the thousands of other essays that they're going to read. You need to do well on your standardized test scores, okay? You need to fill out the admissions application and autograph it with excellence. This is not an all-nighter that you do 5 minutes before the deadline. You take your time, you review it, you do a good job. The other two components that you're responsible for, and you might need some help, but it's your responsibility to know why you're going to school. College is too expensive to experiment for 2 years to figure it out and take 6 years to get a 4-year bachelor's degree. We can't afford to do that anymore. So assessment tools that the schools offer you, things that help you understand, what do I like to do? When do I lose time? When I'm busy doing these types of things, I'm really enjoying myself. You need to know why you're going to college. And last but certainly not least, you have to have the right mindset around college. Way too many students today show up on campus and they're waiting for something to happen. Nobody's going to knock on your dorm door and give you an education. It's your job to go get it. When you go to college, you and your parents are paying for it one way or another. You got to go get it. You should meet with the professors. You should meet with the TAs. You should, second week of your freshman year, be meeting with the guidance counselor saying, how are we going to get me through this program in 4 years? Let's map this strategy out, okay? You want to step foot on campus with a sense of purpose and a plan. Those are the components the student is responsible for. Now, let's go over to the other side, to the blue boxes. These are the critical components for mom and dad, okay? And they're mostly financial. Number one, and I'm going to hand these out. In fact, I'll just give this out to you guys all at the end. You need to know how the Department of Education views your household from a financial aid perspective. You need to know what's called an EFC, Expected Family Contribution. That's the minimum amount of money you will be expected to pay for school. There's a formula. When you fill out a FAFSA or you fill out a CSS profile, which are the two different forms used in the financial aid system, you have to put in parent income, parent assets, student income if they've been working, student assets if they have a bank account in their name, the number of people that live in the household, the number of people that are going to school, the age of the oldest parent. It's like they put it in a blender and mix it up and voila, what comes out? Your expected family contribution. And it represents your starting point, what they expect you're going to pay for school. And the reason that's so important is because the category of aid dictates your planning priorities. So we're going to talk about that too. But that's where you start. Second, you are going to take the lead as the parents on filing the financial aid forms. It's ironic to me that the government created the system in a very student-centric way. When you go to fill out a FAFSA, they start off asking all the questions as if the student is filling it out. Boggles my mind. Boggles my mind. Okay? Do yourself a favor, don't let them fill it out. Okay? You want to fill out the FAFSA and know how to do it. And everyone should complete the financial aid form. Bill Gates' kids Mark Zuckerberg's kids, they would get student loans if they filled out the FAFSA. Filling out the paperwork makes you eligible for certain things. Not filling it out means those are options that are not available to you. So it's real simple. We got to do that term paper, parents. We got to do it, all right? Assess retirement readiness. Most parents I work with who are getting ready to send kids to school are like, what are we talking about retirement for? That's way off in the future. But here's the deal. The kids can get loans and scholarships for school. They're not going to give us any loans or scholarships for retirement. So we need to understand, if I've got $10 to save, how much of it should go toward retirement and how much of it should go toward school. Got to figure that out. Because time needs to work for us, not against us. We can't afford in today's world to start saving for retirement after we get the kids through school. It doesn't work like that, okay? So we need to understand that. And last but not least, we need to establish our education budget. The conversation we need to have with our kids is, here's how much we're prepared to spend on school, and here's for how long. So if it's a 4-year bachelor's degree, if it's a 2 years associate's degree, if they're going on to graduate school, here's the deal. Once a student has a bachelor's degree, mom and dad are out of the financial equation for financial aid. Once they have that bachelor's degree, you're not filling out the FAFSA, they are, because the Department of Education is thinking, wait, this is an educated person, they should be earning a living. So if they're not earning any money, they're going to report zero and they're going to be eligible for more loans, okay? But we all should have a budget. I mean, can you imagine, and this is what happens in America every day. I want you to picture that you drop your 16-year-old off at a car lot, you introduce him to the car salesman and you say, yeah, let him pick out anything he wants. We're not going to do that, but we do that with college every day. It's crazy. So we need to begin with the end in mind. What can we reasonably afford for school? And then let's work backwards. Now, let's talk about the components in the middle. These require collaboration between parent and student. Single most important project component of your college project plan, selecting the right schools to apply to. It's the single most, if you don't remember anything I say tonight, you want to pick schools that are likely to admit you, give you a lot of money, both free and low-cost loans, okay? Affordable. I'm not saying that, and the confusing thing about this is so many schools from an advertised sticker price, a lot of people say, oh, I can't apply to that school, it costs too much. It doesn't meet our budget. Nobody pays retail. Nobody pays the advertised sticker price unless they are really bad consumers. After you leave here tonight, you won't make that mistake, okay? Lots of schools that say they charge a whole bunch of money will discount for the right students. Could be financial. Could be merit-based because you're a good student. Could be a good athlete. Could be a musician. You may have a special talent that they're looking for. So if we pick the right schools to apply to, we're going to increase the probability that we're not going to pay retail. Most of the big scholarship money that you're going to receive will come from the schools themselves. Now that doesn't mean there isn't a lot of third-party scholarship money. What do I mean by third-party scholarship money? The utility company, Kohl's, Coca-Cola. There is a fire, I'm looking for the fire sprinklers. There is a fire sprinklers safety scholarship for $10,000 a year. You got to do an essay. It's open book, okay? But here's the deal. On the third-party scholarships, and there's lots of money, billions of dollars, it's a numbers game. You may have to fill out 50 applications to get 3 to 5 scholarships. But if you thought about it like a part-time job, Where else can a teenager work for 6 hours a week and pay for all their books the freshman year of college? That's huge, right? You just got to look. It's the one area in the whole college project plan where it's not that easy. And a lot of people don't do the work. So if you committed to doing an application a week the first semester of your senior year, you might be really surprised what you can put together, okay? Transition successfully. So many kids do not transition well from high school to college. Why? Well, in high school, you're tested frequently over smaller amounts of information. They pay attention to whether you attend class. You're held accountable. And then we drop you off on a college campus where they don't care if you show up for class. They're going to test you over a ton of information in a midterm and a final. And you may not have the habits from high school that you need to succeed in college. And oh, by the way, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of distractions. There's also some things that our parents never dealt with. There's this thing called HIPAA. Okay? Crazy. So now, when you turn 18, the institutions are going to treat you like adults. And they don't want to talk to your mom and dad. So if we don't have a HIPAA power of attorney, literally this happened. Dad's driving his son to the University of Alabama to do a tour of the school. Kid gets a kidney stone. They go to a rural town in Alabama to the emergency room. Takes him into the emergency room. Dad says, "How's he doing?" Doctor says, "I'm not talking to you about this. He's 18. Yikes. FERPA. Another thing. Students have to check a box and sign off and say it's okay for mom and dad to know my grades and know what's going on at school. They'll take your money whether the kids check the box or not. Excuse me. So we've got to be prepared from a legal perspective to have access to that stuff, okay? Transition successfully. Kind of like a voice. Okay, so this is the time in your life when we've got to understand how money works, all right? And we've really got to figure out where we're losing money, thank you very much, unknowingly and unnecessarily. Where are the leaks in our pipes, right? She took good care of me. All of us have leaky pipes. It could be $5. It could be $20. It could be overpaying on cable or cell phone or the utility bill. This is the time to get our house in order and figure out where can I find that extra cash flow, okay? How we choose to educate our kids is actually a lifestyle choice. And so what we don't want to do is take money that should be set aside for retirement and use it. Don't take savings out of money for the future or money for emergencies to pay for school. We've got to figure out how to get it out of our lifestyle expenses. So this is the time to really take a look at it. Here's the stark reality. I want you to think like a consumer, not like a mom or a dad. Because when we think about what we want to do for our kids, we'll do anything. But 1 year of college is equal to 1 new car. That's crazy, right? Now, it could be a used car, it could be a Fiat, it could be a Mercedes, it could be a Land Rover. But 1 year of college is the equivalent of 1 new car in the driveway. That's how expensive it is. And so we've got to really get our consumer mindset on to figure out how to be smart about that. So, if you were going to go buy a new car, you'd ask some questions. Number one, how much do I have to save for my down payment to get that car, to get that college? Where should I save our down payment? You know, when I save money to buy a car, it's not complicated. I can kind of put it in the bank and not worry about it. Turns out that where we save our money for college impacts the calculation in financial aid. It impacts our expected family contribution, our EFC. So we're going to talk about places that we need to be aware of in terms of saving money. What sources of financing are available? Usually when we buy a car, we're going to the credit union, the bank, the car dealership. We've got a few other sources of financing when it comes to school. And then, okay, once we've figured out how we're going to pay for it, where are we going to get the monthly cash flow, right? And the problem is you're not buying one new car, you're buying a fleet. 4, you hope, or 5 per child, okay? So we've got to get really smart. Don't get depressed. Don't get depressed. We'll figure it out. So this is just a simple table that says, okay, if I was going to put 10% down, like sometimes we'll save 10% to go buy a car, or 20%. So if I'm going to go to Colorado State, which on a retail basis costs about $25,000 a year if you're living on campus and living in a dorm and eating dorm food, okay? Well, that means we're going to spend 6 figures on that college education. That's a lot. So if we're going to save 10 or 20%, that's $10,000 or $20,000 we've got to save. Now, if we choose to go to an out-of-state school, like University of Kansas, anybody here wave the wheat, love the Jayhawks? Not so much? Well, that's almost going to cost twice as much. Okay? Now, this is if you pay retail. Understand there's some interesting ways that you don't have to pay retail at out-of-state schools we're going to talk about. What if we wanted to go to a private school like the University of Denver or Colorado College, right here in Colorado Springs? A lot of people shake their heads and go, I can't afford that, right? You'd be surprised. Yeah, they might say that their advertised sticker price, like when you go to the car dealership, here's my sticker price. Nobody pays sticker price. But they might say it's going to cost more than $60,000 a year. Now, you people are not going to pay that. So don't let the sticker price scare you. Stanford, wow, an elite private school. I mean, there are literally people who are going to spend $250,000 educating their kids if they're going to pay retail. You'd be better off buying a franchise, right? Get a job, get an income-paying job. So these are some staggering numbers, and this is why we're here tonight, because this is not sustainable. We need to be smarter. All right, where should we save our down payment? This is really important. Notice that there are 2 lines. The FAFSA, which stands for Free Application for Student Aid, that is a form that you will fill out, and all colleges that administer federal financial aid use the FAFSA. You will be filling it out, okay? And then the next one is the CSS profile. There are about 250 private schools that, in addition to the FAFSA, use what's called the CSS profile. These are the private schools like a DU, like a Colorado College, that have gone out and raised endowment dollars from previous graduates. And so they've said to the College Board, you know what, we're going to be a little more careful with this money that we've raised from our alumni. So we're going to have you, College Board, collect a little bit more information, actually a lot more information, than we get from the FAFSA. So it's even more paperwork. It's electronic, but you got to fill it out, okay? And they use a slightly different formula. They look at things that are not looked at on the FAFSA. So let's start with the FAFSA. If you put money in a money market account, in a checking account, and that's where you save your money, you're going to have to report it. It's going to be calculated in your FAFSA calculation, okay? If you put money in a savings bond, a lot of people do that, or they used to do that, that's going to be included in what you report on the FAFSA. If you put money in a 529 plan for the kids' college education, in an UTMA account, in a savings account for your student, they're going to add that up and count it in the calculation. Okay? If you're lucky enough to have real estate other than where you live, it's going to count in the calculation. They're basically saying any asset that you have, we want to include in the calculation. Now, if you have a retirement account, maybe you're participating in something at work, maybe you have an IRA, that is not included in the FAFSA. If you made the contributions, though, this year on the tax return we're using for the FAFSA, they'll pull it back into your income for that year only. But if it's already in that IRA or that 401k or that retirement wrapper, it's as if it doesn't exist for FAFSA purposes, okay? If you own your home and you have equity in your home, meaning there's a little bit of a difference between what you owe the bank and what it's worth if you sold it tomorrow, that is not included in the FAFSA. But it is included in the CSS profile, okay? And if you own life insurance policies that have any cash value, that is not included in the financial aid forms. So just understand where you save your money matters from a reporting perspective, and the EFC that you get for a school that uses FAFSA will be different than the one that you use the CSS profile because they use different math, okay? Now, what sources of financing are available to us? Well, first of all, there's a lot more free money for college than there is for buying a car. Okay? Now let's talk about that. Number one, the third-party scholarships we talked about. If we apply for them, we might pick up $500, $2,000, $1,500. Let's talk about going to out-of-state schools but paying an in-state price. Here in Colorado, we're part of what's called the Western Undergraduate Exchange. The acronym is WUI. Catchy, okay? What it means, there are certain schools that participate in the Western Undergraduate Exchange that are going to discount the cost of going to their school even though you're a Colorado resident. So let's think crazy. You want to go to Hawaii? Do you know how hard it is for them to get people from the mainland to send their kids to Hawaii because it's such a long trip and it's expensive, right? So one of the things they do, if they like you, if you're an above average student, if you ask to be considered part of the WUI program, they may afford you in-state tuition in Hawaii. Not so bad. Boise State, they do it a lot. It all started a long time ago when you couldn't always get the degree program you wanted in your home state school, and they decided, you know, that's not right. Let's try to level the playing field and make sure these people get the education they need. Well, it's kind of morphed into a tool that many of the schools use as a way to get people to come to their school. So just understand, if you were really interested in going to a school out of state, University of New Mexico, they may give you the opportunity to pay in-state tuition if you're a Western Undergraduate Exchange candidate, okay? And that doesn't have a loan attached to it. That's not accruing interest. You don't have to pay that back. That's a big deal, right? There's military programs, ROTC programs, ways to access it. Now, there's also borrowed money. The most common borrowed money are the Stafford loans. That's a true student loan. And we hear all these headlines about horrible student loan debt. But here's the fact. No student can borrow more than $27,000 in their entire four-year college career in a true student loan from the federal government. Now, if they go get a private loan, if they go outside of that, I'm sure they can borrow more at exorbitant rates. But the fact of the matter is this. If you complete the FAFSA, you'll be offered a $5,500 loan for your freshman year. And you can take some of it, none of it, or all of it. You'll be offered $6,500 your sophomore year. You'll be offered $7,500 your junior year and $7,500 again your senior year. Okay? So that's a true student loan. The rest of it, they may offer in the form of a Parent Plus loan. Okay? And that, I think, is a runaway freight train because those are not inexpensive loans. They have a 4% origination fee, 7% interest, 10-year amortization schedule. It is really like buying a car. So I would encourage most parents, unless it's absolutely the last option, don't go down that road. The kids can get a student loan. They don't have to make any payments till 6 months after graduation. They can work out a myriad of repayment programs up to 20 years. So they have an opportunity, because of their education and the jobs they'll have, to actually pay it back. So let's just be a smart consumer with the loans that you're going to be offered. Now, this is an expected family contribution table. I'm going to send this around to you. And I'm going to do that right now, because I want you to see what your minimum out-of-pocket cost is going to be in terms of paying for college. Now, I want to explain this chart so that you understand what it's telling you. What you see on the far left column on both tables is what's called AGI, or adjusted gross income. How much money do you earn every year in the household? And the good news is, if you're not on the chart, then your EFC is 0, and you're eligible for a lot of financial aid. Then it says number of dependents. 1, 2, 3, 4 kids. If you've got more than that, it's a different chart, okay? This is a household number. So let's just take the one at the top. $30,000 adjusted gross income, 2 kids. The expectation in terms of minimum out-of-pocket cost is 0. So the financial aid system is designed to step up and fill the gaps. Now, not every school fills the gap 100%, which is why picking the schools that have a history of giving away money to people that qualify is so important, okay? So let's say, just for the sake of discussion, I'm a $30,000 household with 2 kids. I apply to Stanford. I get in. You're probably going for free. Okay? So hopefully the students in the room understand getting good grades and good test scores is a big deal. Okay? Now, let's say, for the sake of discussion, that I'm a $40,000 a year household and I've got 1 child and my EFC is $2,733. And it costs, I'm going to say $12,000 to go to this school, just because I want easy math. So $12,000 minus that $2,000, there's a $10,000 gap. That gap is what the financial aid officer at the school starts to work on. They're assuming you're going to pay the $2,700. Okay? So understand where you're starting, and understand that the role of the financial aid office is to evaluate, hey, if a school costs this much and you're expected to pay that much, whatever the difference is where they start to go to work. State schools usually meet about 50 to 70% of the gap. Private schools, which start out with an extreme higher price, usually meet 80 to 100% of the gap. So sometimes, with the right student, it can be cheaper to go to the expensive private school than the state school. It's really, really important that you understand that. And it's really, really important that the students realize, by having good grades and test scores, they improve the possibility of different schools that they can attend, without making mom and dad pay for more. Okay? Now, category of aid dictates planning priorities. If you're a category 1 household, which means based on the chart that I just handed out, the cost of attendance of the school is always greater than your expected family contribution, then you're a category 1 household. And you should be focused on making sure that you keep your expected family contribution as low as possible, and keep your aid eligibility as high as possible. That's your number 1 priority. If you're a Category 2 household, which means sometimes the cost of attendance is higher than your expected family contribution, sometimes it's not. If I went to community college, it's not. If I went to state college, it is. If I've got 2 kids in school at the same time and that EFC gets split between them because it's a household number, sometimes when we have kids overlapping, we're eligible for more aid. Now we've really got to look at school selection as our #1 priority, okay? Category 3 household, they're never going to qualify for any need-based aid. They need a whole different strategy. But notice that school selection is either priority 1 or 2 for everybody. Picking the right schools to apply to is so critical. And so I want to talk about that because I think people don't understand that the same algorithms that Southwest Airlines or a hotel uses to establish a price, which changes all the time, right? You see commercials about Travelocity or Priceline, or they're up, they're down. It depends on if you're in the loyalty program. Not everybody pays the same price for a hotel room or a seat on an airplane. Well, the same is true for college. So what the colleges are looking at is first, where do the parents show up in terms of their ability to write a check? Am I going to be using a federal financial aid system, or is this a household that's going to be able to pay for it? Where are they on the continuum? But then they're going to look at the student. And they're going to look at the student relative to the kids that are enrolled in their freshman class from a GPA, test score, and class rank perspective. It's the ultimate theory of relativity. Everyone that applies to Princeton is a brainiac, right? Great test scores, great GPA, lots of leadership and volunteer hours. But if we applied to some schools that are not maybe as name brand recognized, those schools are going to create discounts. They're going to create scholarships. They're going to create incentives. And you might scratch your head and say, well, why would that be? Because what the schools know is this. Every time they bring a smarter kid to their school, they raise their GPA and test score requirements and rise in the rankings, which means they can charge more money. And what they've learned after decades and decades of doing this is when they have a kid that's in the top 25% of their talent pool, in 20 years when they do their fundraising campaign, that kid's probably going to write a check for their endowment program. So they're going to make a present day investment in a future endowment stream. They will invest in that student. So your job is to figure out which schools view my student that way. We can find that kind of scholarship money for a 2.9, 21 ACT, okay? So it's not just 4.0 perfect score on SATs, but it's all relative, okay? Now, I'm going to hand these out. So this is the project plan. Okay, I said it was a multi-year project plan. So this takes from when a student is a sophomore through when they're a senior, all the different things that they should be focused on. And it's color-coded. Blue is parents, red is student, yellow is parent, okay? Now what's great about this project plan is you have a lot of resources that are available to you. Through the schools, through the Parent Challenge program, and now you know when you need to look for them. Test prep, for example, taking an ACT or an SAT. Every junior would benefit from test prep. And when I talk about test prep, I'm not talking about the content knowledge that they need to know in terms of English and math and those sorts of things. I'm talking about strategies, how to do well in the test, how to pace yourself, how to be able to do a 3-hour test, how to make a decision when you're stuck between 2 questions and you're trying to make the best guesstimate. Those types of things are made available all the time, and you're going to want to take advantage of them. Books at the library, test prep workbooks. There's tons of things like that. But that's a project plan, a detailed project plan that would allow you to stay on track to make sure at the point at which you're completing your admissions applications and sending things off to schools to see if you're a good fit, or if you're in the top 50 or 25% of those schools, you're putting your best foot forward, okay? So I would use that project plan. Now, people say, well, where am I going to find the money? Are we being as smart as we can be? Have we filled out the financial aid forms correctly? Have we made sure that we're as eligible for aid as we can be? Are we overpaying for anything in our life? This is the time to figure it out. Okay, so let's talk about this. Because look at this. I mean, this could be an in-state scenario. You got college tuition, you've got books, housing, meals, transportation there and back. This is a huge investment in your future, okay? So we need to be really smart about how we're going to tackle it. In my opinion, what the school system does is address the first two components for the student, the IQ components. The GPA, the test scores, the ability to write an essay, to complete the admissions, get the transcripts, all that kind of stuff. That's what we can really rely and should rely on the school system for. Where I think we may fall short in the school system are on what I call the EQ elements, the emotional intelligent things. Kids really understanding why they're going to school, what they're there to study. There are resources available, but oftentimes we've got to ask. There may be majors assessments, personality assessments, and tools like that. If you have access to Naviance, which is a program that most of the schools make available, use it. It's usually made available for free. You need to use all the assessment tools that are available to you and make sure that you understand how you're going to tackle this thing called college. I said before, the single most important choice you're going to make are the schools you're going to apply to. So often people will apply to schools because a boyfriend's going there, or it's close, or I don't want to work that hard, okay? This is the place where you're making a strategic decision about the future. And so we really want to pay attention to that. And then from a transitioning perspective, I spent a lot of time telling parents, and this occurred to me, my son had terrible acne. I had to take him to the dermatologist. And I'm sitting there, he's 14 at the time. I'm getting ready to fill out the paperwork. And I thought, wow, in a couple years I'm going to have him fill out an application that could cost me 6 figures. What am I doing? Here, fill it out. We need our kids to start being responsible for themselves right now, while they're living at home, while we can coach them and guide them. We want them to make a $30 mistake before they make a $3,000 mistake. So the kinds of things that we need them to do to step up and advocate for themselves, we need them to be emailing and calling and making appointments and taking care of themselves and doing laundry and dishes. And that sounds silly because we want to say, oh no, focus, do your homework. We're doing them a disservice. They show up on campus and they don't know how to function. So in terms of our ability to help our kids transition more effectively, we have to give them those responsibilities and hold them accountable now. It's not a parenting lecture. It's a, do you want them to do well? Because 37% of the students that start college never come back for their sophomore year. They dig a hole so deep, they can't get out of it. They get behind. They fail. That costs all of us time and money. We need to set them up for success by giving them responsibilities now and helping them, okay? This is the area for the parents that I usually help them with, the financial piece. How do we figure out how we're going to pay for it? And what I offer is a consultation, okay? if you have access to this website, centerforcollegesolutions.com, I have a scheduling button on my website that allows you to say, hey, I want to meet with Beth. And by the way we meet usually is on a computer screen. Okay? You're going to share the same computer screen because I want to use a program, a software package that allows me to show you how the Department of Education views your household from a financial aid perspective. I want to calculate your EFC and tell you where you're starting. I want to tell you what your planning priorities should be and how you're most likely going to succeed, okay? Usually I charge a lot of money for that. That's not going to happen. You guys do this, it's for free, okay? So if you want help figuring out where you're starting and what you should be focused on, and you're here tonight, you find a spot on my calendar, sign up, and we'll do that. And if you don't have access to a computer, if we need to set something up here, we'll make that happen. Okay? Now, this is my contact information. So as you guys are going through this process, you may have what you consider silly, crazy questions. Call me. Send me an email. I am a resource available to help you navigate this process and do this the right way. Okay? And there's no such thing as a bad question or a silly question, because this is ridiculously complicated. I mean, I get on the FAFSA site with parents and I'm like, who thought this was a clear question? Really? That's the formal part of comments. Now I just want to open it up to questions, answer anything I can to be of assistance. Yes? So her question is about homeschooling, medically retired. So your question, actually a couple of questions, right? So let me address the financial piece first, and I'll address the homeschooling second. The financial piece first. Medically retired, to me, means he's probably got disability income, which is non-taxable. Okay. So when you file your FAFSA, and thank you for reminding me of this. We are in a world that is called prior, because only the government could come up with this kind of a program. So let's say I have a 2020 grad, okay? That means I will use the prior tax return to file the FAFSA. He's a 2020 grad, which means I'll use the 2018 tax return to file the FAFSA. It always lags by 2 years. That was a big change that they made a couple years ago, okay? They will ask about non-taxed income, but on the FAFSA in particular, that will be favorable because you'll have less income to be reported on the adjusted gross income. You'll be eligible for more aid. So it's important that we do that right, okay? You asked about homeschooling. What do I do? Grades, GPA, test scores. I wish I could say the colleges have figured out what to do with homeschooling. It differs by school. But the bottom line is this. I know that there is a state of Colorado way for homeschoolers to create a transcript. You'll be required to provide that. And yeah, you're going to want to figure out how to prep the kids for PSAT, SAT, and ACT. Now, whole strategy on SAT versus ACT. Look, SAT changed their testing format to be more like ACT. It's the 80-20 rule of life. 80% of the kids test better on the ACT format, 20% do better on the SAT format. The colleges say they only take one type. That's not true. They all have a conversion table. Take the test the kid does best on. Submit that score. But unless you've got a genius, you're thinking about test prep and those tests at the conclusion of the junior year of high school. Why? Those are tests designed to measure the proficiency of the student at the end of their junior year. So what I'll do with my son, as an example, I think of it like the Olympics. I want him to peak right before he takes the big test. So any test prep I do will be after spring break of his junior year so that he can take the test in May. And I know they give it in the schools and all that kind of stuff, but that's the way I'm going to tackle it. Does that help? Yes. Okay. Other questions? Yes?
Well, all of this is harder for me because I have a bit of time. So what do you think about that?
So the question has to do in choosing a high school, do I choose a charter school that claims to do better college prep, or do I choose a public school that I think what you're talking about is dual enrollment, where they're taking the equivalent of community college credits that could get you probably a degree and what am I trying to say, an associate's degree by the time you, excellent question, and I will answer it like I always answer, it depends on the student. Depends on the student. All of this needs to be driven by the needs of the student. You could have 3 kids. One would be great with dual credit because the associate's degree is the right launching point. And then you've got another one that should be in AP classes and is going to be pursuing something, maybe going on to a master's degree. It all starts with why. Who is this kid? What are they going to pursue? What's their path? And most people say to me, well, Beth, a 17-year-old doesn't know what they want to do. Most 40-year-olds don't know what they want to do. You know, it's amazing. If I enlisted in the military, they'd give me a battery of tests and assign me a job because we have the science to know how we're hardwired. We have that ability to understand how to play to our strengths, what things we're going to thrive with. We just don't use it in education. So when I talked about the EQ elements for the students, this is where I think we as parents have to step up and demand that we have some better tools available to us to figure out what these kids are going to be good at. You could have one household and we've got a math person and a music person, and it's not a cookie cutter program. But there's an education for everybody. And so figuring out, and some are not going to know. Look, boys are a little bit slower than girls in this whole development model. We left the boys in the dust in the early 90s. When we made the girl-friendly curriculum, we did a great job. And girls are thriving. That's why 60% of the applications are female and 40% are male, and they're trying to keep a 50-50 freshman class. So if you have a smart boy, you're going to get a lot more money than a smart girl today, because they're fighting over the smart boys. Okay? So we've got to figure out, and it's going to take longer sometimes with certain kids. Some come out of the womb and they know, you know, and others, wow, don't have a clue. Okay? So we've got to pay attention to that. And that's okay, but my argument would be, why am I going to go to an expensive private school where I'm on the bottom of the barrel and I don't know? Who in their right mind would pay for that? It happens all the time. Don't do that to yourself. I think one of the most underutilized strategies is to get the associate's degree at the community college and then go get the big degree from the 4-year school. Nobody asks you in a job interview, did you go here all 4 years? They just say, where'd you graduate? We are underutilizing, I mean, if that's the smart money play, if we're not ready, if we've got a B minus student, let's go get that associate's degree. Now, why do I say associate's degree at the community college? Here in Colorado, we're really lucky. It is the law of the state that if I attend community college, my credits will transfer to a state school. So I'll get full value. But if I choose to go to a private school or I choose to go out of state, they don't have to take those credits. They have to take the associate's degree. So let's not go to community college and be kind of wishy-washy. Let's go get a degree that we can use wherever we go next. That's being a better consumer of higher education. To answer your question, depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right? It's hard to know with a 4th grader, but you'll have a sense for it in 7th and 8th grade. You'll have a sense for it.
From the financial point of view, no.
The financial point of view would say this. If I have a student that gets dual credit and they've finished an associate's degree, I've only got 2 years to pay for, go where they're going to get the best degree for the best price. Contrast that with, I went to a charter school and I've been accepted at a great 4-year college, but if I pick the right schools, I'm not necessarily spending more money. But let's face it, 4 years of college versus 2, It's probably cheaper, dual credit. Question is it the kind of kid that can handle that? Will they do it? Will they stick to it? You won't know that until you get there. Yes.
I heard from a guy through the FAFSA that the FAFSA will only pay for like grants for your first degree. So if you get an associate's degree, it's not going to pay for anything towards a bachelor's degree. Likewise, if you get a bachelor's, it's not going to pay for your master's or doctorate or whatever.
Okay, so the question is, what does the FAFSA pay for? Okay? You fill out the FAFSA every year. So I've never heard an instance where it's only going to pay for the associate's degree or it's only going to pay for the bachelor's degree. So let's be clear. When a student is under the age of 24, does not have a bachelor's degree, is not a veteran of war, does not have dependents of their own, they've basically closed every loophole. You will be the parent that files the FAFSA for 4 years until they get a bachelor's degree. And they ask you to do it every year because people's circumstances change. People get divorced, people die, people lose a job, people win the lottery, people get an inheritance. And so every year they're asking you, just like your income taxes, tell me what went on financially. Okay? If it doesn't change materially, you can pretty much count that it's going to be very similar to what you got the last time. So even if you got an associate's degree and now you're applying to the 4-year school, you're going to get the same results from the FAFSA. Now, it does change when you go on to get the master's or the PhD because mom and dad are out of the equation. And the loan limits go way up for graduate school. Okay? Yes? Oh, yeah. Thank you for saying that, because this is so important. The number one thing you're going to do in October of your oldest student's senior year of high school, okay? October. You're going to go on and get your FSA ID. Used to be called the FAFSA PIN. And the reason that they had her records is because it's tied to a social security number. But wow, you go into the penalty box if you forget your FSA ID, if you transpose a digit on your social security. I mean, you do not want to do that. When you get your FSA ID as a parent, keep it, because you're going to use it again and again and again and again. The student also gets an FSA ID that's unique to them. So in a household with multiple students, you could have the same parent FSA ID for all of them, but you're going to have a student FSA ID for each individual student. You got to have a place you keep this stuff. I had one mom, she tried so many different, well, I think I use this username, and I think I use this PIN, and she just totally locked herself out. Had to start all over. You don't want to do that because you want those records. It makes it easier. Okay? Now, here's the other thing. They have this thing called a data retrieval tool, which you can check a box and it will automatically go out to the IRS and pull that tax return from 2 years in so you don't have to do all the data entry. Okay, that would be nice. Now, I got hacked last year and they've changed a lot of the things around it, but I think they finally figured it out. The whole reason they went to prior years is because they had such a hard time with the tax returns and they thought, okay, 2 years later it should all be pretty much settled down. It is what it is, okay? But that's important for you to understand. But the record keeping is key because you don't want to enter all that data again. Okay, other questions? You've had enough, huh? It's time for Girl Scout cookies, right? Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And seriously, if I can be of any assistance, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to help you. Thank you.